Well, I like talking about ideas as opposed to people. I love the quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, and she said, small minds talk about people. Mediocre minds talk about events. Great minds talk about ideas. So let's talk about the idea of a Tesla car. That is actually an innovation of old technologies. Yeah, the lithium-ion batteries are better than the lead acid or what have you. But you basically have a battery being plugged in to a coal-fired power grid. An actual Tesla, like Nikola Tesla had, that J.P. Morgan famously turned to Tesla and said, if we can't put a meter on it, it's not going to come out. These are big industrialists back then. I call a Tesla actually a Musk, because what Elon Musk has is an innovation of an old technology where you plug in a car to a grid. Now what's the grid? The electric grid. Most people don't know this. It's being run mostly off fossil fuels. Very small percentage of power comes from renewables. So it feels good. So, that whole paradigm needs to change where we say, where are the big breakthroughs that need to happen? And those have not happened yet because they've been suppressed for alleged national security reasons, but in reality it's because the national security state is being run by people with big vested industrial powers. The industrial fascists, just like in the 1800s, early 20th century, that same mindset is running the current economy, the current paradigm of technology. So I think if you look at something like SpaceX, it's using just a more refined version of what Werner von Braun invented for Adolf Hitler in World War II, called a rocket. You burn something, causes a propulsion, shoots it up like a Roman candle. It's not an invention. It's not a breakthrough. So all of those technologies look cool because they're repackaged with maybe some computerized systems. But the fundamental energy and propulsion system that's running the system is very old and really isn't going to fix the environmental crisis, or more importantly, or equally importantly, the macroeconomic crisis, where you have 48% of the world's population doesn't have indoor plumbing yet. So the poverty, the extreme poverty leads to revolutions and violence and radicalism and extremism. All of that and the biosphere collapse isn't going to be fixed by a plug-in electric car. So now I think people like Elon Musk certainly know of these other technologies, but they also know that there have been very fierce and rather nasty things done to people who try to bring them out, up to and including killing them if necessary. I mean, it's suspected that Stan Meyer, who had a car that ran on water using a type of electrolysis, was killed. In fact, right before he collapsed, he says, I've been poisoned, and collapsed.
It's a major breakthrough that will no doubt make motorists happy. And as Ralph Robinson explains, the Pentagon is also showing lots of interest in this project.
He has developed what's called a water fuel cell. It has taken the place of his old gas tank. The water fuel cell breaks down water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen. The hydrogen is used to run his dune buggy.
I don't care if you use rainwater, well water, city water, ocean water. If you don't have any fresh water, go ahead and use snow. If you don't have any snow available to you, they use salt water because there's no adverse effect through the fuel cell.
The Pentagon flew a lieutenant colonel in last week to look at Meyer's invention. There's talk of possibly using it in the Star Wars defense program and to run army tanks. Myers is currently perfecting a water fuel cell for cars. It will cost about $1,500. He says it won't need any maintenance, and you won't have to replace it.
And he had other technologies that already had national security orders on them. My group was going to acquire them. It's a very interesting story. He had a toroid, it looked like a donut, that had a national security order on it from the 80s that would run your house. My science advisor and team went to go see this after his heirs made it available for a group to buy. We, at that time, didn't have the resources to get it. An engineering group got it. They were all subsequently assassinated, all of them, except one. One survived. That was up in Michigan. So people don't realize the kind of things that will be done to maintain the hegemony over a fossil fuel based or nuclear power based and utility based centralized energy generation system that benefits a very small elite. And we're talking hundreds of trillions of dollars. If you add up the value of all the oil, gas, coal, nuclear power, public utilities, etc., it's hundreds of trillions of dollars conservatively. And for that, you run into a big buzzsaw. So I think people, a lot of these industrialists that I've met, or people who are, quote, high tech, I say there is no high tech out there. Our civilization has no high technology yet, except in a classified project. The things that are the fundamental energy and power sources that would run a planet properly. So we're a level 1 civilization, peaceful, not destroying the environment. Those have been viciously suppressed for 100 years. And so I've often called this the lost century, where there's an entire century of lost evolution, technology, social development, economic development, et cetera, and so on, because of these big, corrupt, fascist industrial interests. And it was like that in the late 1800s, early 20th century, the time of Nikola Tesla, and it's true of that today. That dynamic has not changed. And that's what we have to make. That's the big change that has to happen. One of the big changes. It's one of the big ones. And that's why we have to do that. Now, Elon Musk had a partner who co-founded PayPal with him, named Peter Thiel. And he wrote a book, From Zero to One, where he talks about this and mentions, I think in the book, he talks about that in 1964, you could fly from JFK to Paris in the same amount of time on a jet as you do now. So how is it from 1945 to now? There's nothing? The minds of humanity have come up with nothing? Think about it. Everyone stop for a minute and meditate on that for 1 second. That's just not possible. So this is why a very mainstream group called the Federation of American Scientists put out a research paper in 2010 that said there were over 5,000 patents that had been confiscated under national security orders, many of them dealing with energy. These are big macroeconomic issues where you have a few big powerhouses, multi-trillion-dollar consortia that are wanting to keep the status quo, and then they have the national security state or the patent office be their lackeys, their shills. And so this is a dynamic that I think has to change, and we have a plan to change